Let me set the scene for you. It's late at night in Goyang, South Korea. The stadium has just emptied out. 70,000 people who spent months, some of them years, waiting for this exact night are making their way home, soaked from the rain, voices gone, still processing what they just witnessed. The BTS Arirang World Tour has officially begun. By every external measure, by every metric that the music industry uses to define success, tonight was historic. Tonight was everything. And somewhere backstage, or in a room nearby, ParkJimin is sitting down in a black hoodie in front of a phone camera with a punching bag behind him. And he goes live. And nobody was ready for what came next. I need you to stay with me for this entire video, because what happened in that live stream, what Jimin said, what ARMY noticed, what it revealed about who this person actually is beneath the performance, it goes so much deeper than a single post-concert broadcast. This is about the cost of being someone who cares as much as Jimin cares. This is about what happens when an artist holds themselves to a standard that the rest of the world can't even fully see. And this is about a fandom that was watching so closely, so attentively, that they caught something in that live that Jimin never explicitly said out loud, but that his body said for him. We're going to get into all of it. But first, I need you to understand the full weight of what last night actually was. Because context matters here. If you don't understand what went into April 9th, 2026, you can't fully understand why that live stream hit the way it did. BTS has been gone. Not metaphorically gone. Not on a break in the casual sense. Actually gone in the most structured and unavoidable way possible. South Korean law requires mandatory military service, and one by one, the members of BTS fulfilled that obligation. For a group that had spent nearly a decade being one of the most omnipresent forces in global music, that silence was felt everywhere. By the industry, by the charts, and most acutely by the ARMY, the fan base that had built their lives around the music, the content, the connection. Years passed, and then, in March 2026, it ended. Arirang dropped. The comeback concert at Gwangwonmin happened. The Netflix special streamed to the world. And the world tour was announced. 80-plus shows, 30-plus cities, a scale that nobody in K-pop history has attempted at this level. April 9th was the beginning of all of that. The first night of the first leg, in Goyang, South Korea. 70,000 people inside that stadium. The production team behind this tour had spent months, arguably years, designing a show that would match the magnitude of the moment. The stage, the lighting, the choreography, the special effects, every single element had been engineered to deliver something that felt worthy of this return. And Jimin, specifically, had been working on something new. Something he had never attempted on a stage before. A creative decision that he made quietly, privately, long before that first spotlight ever turned on. He decided to remove choreography from his performance. Now I want you to sit with how significant that sentence is, because if you know anything about Jimin as a performer, you know that dance is not just a skill he has. It is the language through which he communicates everything that words and vocals alone cannot carry. From the very beginning of his career, his movement has been the thing that separates him. Professionals across the industry, choreographers, directors, fellow artists, have described what he does on stage as something beyond technical execution. It carries emotion in a way that doesn't feel rehearsed even when it has been rehearsed thousands of times. When Jimin dances, people feel it. That is his superpower. That is the thing that makes people rewatch fan cams until 3 in the morning. And he chose to set it aside. Deliberately. Willingly. In service of a staging concept he believed in enough to make that sacrifice. He wanted to try a new theatrical approach to one of his moments in the show. A visual, atmospheric staging that relied on specific technical elements, specifically pyrotechnic smoke effects, to create something he had been envisioning for a long time. The idea was clear in his head. The rehearsals had been done. The decision had been made and committed to. And when April 9th arrived, he walked onto that stage ready to show 70,000 people something they had never seen from him before. Then it started raining. And not the kind of rain that's romantic and cinematic and adds a layer of drama to a live performance. We're talking about a serious downpour. The kind of rain that changes the physics of an outdoor show entirely. Sound diffuses differently. Surfaces become dangerous. Crowd visibility shifts. And most critically for what Jimin had planned, there was no wind. The weather conditions created a situation where the smoke from the pyrotechnics had nowhere to go. Instead of clearing the way it was designed to, instead of creating the atmospheric visual effect he had worked toward, it just sat there, heavy and unmoving. The staging that he had sacrificed his choreography for, the creative risk he had taken on the biggest night of this era of his career, did not land the way it existed in his imagination. And he felt it in real time. Standing on that stage in the rain, with 70,000 people in front of him, he felt the gap between what he intended and what was actually happening. And he kept going. Because that's what you do. Because 70,000 people are there and they came from everywhere, and they deserve everything you have regardless of whether the technical elements are cooperating. So he kept going. But after the show, when it was over, when the crowd was gone, he didn't just go to sleep. He didn't put his phone away and process it privately. He went live. And the version of Jimin that showed up in that broadcast was not the version we're used to seeing in post-concert content. It was quieter, stiller, more inward. He sat there in his hoodie, and he started talking about the night with the kind of honesty that most public figures never allow themselves, especially not on a platform where millions of people can watch in real time. He said there were a lot of things he found unfortunate about the night. He talked about the rain. He explained the smoke issue, how it was supposed to clear, how it didn't, how the absence of wind completely disrupted the effect he had designed around. And then he explained the choreography decision, revealing to ARMY for the first time that he had intentionally removed movement from the performance to make room for this new staging. He connected those dots out loud in a way that made clear he understood exactly what had happened and exactly why it felt the way it felt. And here's where I want to pause and talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough when we talk about ParkJimin as an artist, because this live stream brought it into focus in a way that I think is important. The standard he holds himself to is not the standard of did the audience have a good time. It is not the standard of did the reviews call it a success. It is not the standard of did the numbers look right. His standard is internal, personal, and extraordinarily precise. He measures himself against the version of the performance that exists in his mind before he ever steps on stage, the version where every element works, where every creative decision pays off, where the vision translates fully from his imagination into the experience of the audience. And when there is a gap between that version and what actually happened, he feels it with an intensity that he doesn't know how to turn off. That is both his greatest strength and the thing that costs him the most. Because that internal standard is exactly why he is who he is. It's why his performances feel like they do. It's why the preparation he puts into a single moment on stage would stagger most people if they knew the full extent of it. But it is also the reason that a night where 70,000 people went home having experienced something extraordinary can still feel, to him, like a night where he fell short. And then ARMY noticed his hands. This is the part of the story that spread the fastest online, and I think it's the part that tells you the most about the relationship between Jimin and the people who love his work. Because it wasn't something he drew attention to. He wasn't talking about how he felt physically. He was talking about the show, about the staging, about his creative decisions. And while he was doing that, while he was sitting there being honest and measured and calm, his hands were visibly shaking. Not slightly, noticeably, the kind of trembling that doesn't lie. One fan posted about it, and then it was everywhere within minutes. And the response was immediate and overwhelming and completely split in two directions. One group immediately went to the physical explanation, which is entirely valid and probably the most accurate reading of what was happening. He had just performed a full concert production in pouring rain after months of preparation and touring-level physical exertion. His body had been running on adrenaline for hours, and when you come down from that level of output, especially in cold and wet conditions, trembling is your body's way of recalibrating. It is a completely reasonable physiological response to an extraordinary physical event. But another group couldn't stop thinking about the emotional dimension of it. Because this is a person with a documented history of carrying enormous pressure internally. Someone who has, in his own words in interviews and in his own music, described what it feels like to chase a standard that keeps moving further away the closer you get to it. Someone whose relationship with his own performances is so intense that people who have worked closely with him have spoken about how seriously he takes every single moment, every single detail, every single thing that didn't go according to plan. And watching him sit there, quiet and honest and shaking, talking about all the ways the night fell short of what he wanted it to be. The emotional read didn't feel like a stretch to the people who know his history. The protective instinct that swept through ARMY in that moment was something to witness. People were writing directly to him on Weverse. Fans who had been at the concert were posting their own videos, their own memories of the night, trying to show him what it looked like from where they were standing. Not from the vantage point of smoke that didn't clear, but from the vantage point of someone who drove hours to be in that stadium and felt changed by what they experienced. The message was consistent across every language, every time zone, every corner of the fandom. You gave us everything. You always give us everything. Please know that we see it. And then there was a separate conversation happening in parallel that added another layer of complexity to the whole situation. Because in the hours between the end of the concert and Jimin's live, there had been people online posting their reactions to the show. Some of them expressing disappointment about specific elements. Some of them noting that the choreography felt different. Some of them commenting on the effects. Normal audience reactions that happen after every large-scale concert, the kind of hot takes and immediate impressions that social media produces automatically in the aftermath of any major event. But when Jimin went live and addressed those exact things, the choreography, the smoke, the rain, it felt to many fans like he had read those posts. Like he had seen what people were saying before he even sat down in front of that camera. And that made people furious on his behalf in a way that was visceral and real. Because here is someone who just spent months preparing something, who made a brave, creative decision that required real sacrifice, who performed through rain and malfunctioning technical elements, and still gave 70,000 people a night they'll never forget. And the idea that he might have spent any portion of the hours after that show reading criticism instead of resting, that he might have absorbed those words into the already difficult internal accounting he was already doing, was something ARMY could not sit with easily. What this entire night revealed, the concert, the live, the trembling hands, the fan response, is something about the nature of what it costs to be an artist at this level when you are also this kind of person. Because not every performer at Jimin's level carries their work the way he carries his. There are artists who are able to compartmentalize, who are able to walk off a stage and let the show exist separately from their sense of self, who are able to say the rain happened, the smoke didn't work, these things are outside my control, I did my best and that's enough. And that is a healthy and legitimate way to exist as a performer. Jimin doesn't work that way. He never has. And the evidence of that is everywhere in his history, in the trainee stories, in the pre-debut footage, in the way he approaches every era of BTS with a specificity of intention that is almost architectural. He designs his contributions to things. He thinks about them at a level of detail that most people never see, because most of it happens internally, privately, before anyone else is even aware that a decision is being made. The choreography removal was not a last-minute call. That was something he sat with, worked through, decided on, and committed to. And when the night didn't allow it to pay off the way he needed it to, the person left holding that gap was him. And yet, Goyang has 2 more nights, April 11th, April 12th. And anyone who has followed Jimin's career long enough knows exactly what that means. It means that right now, in whatever room he's in, however tired his body is, part of his mind is already working, already taking apart last night and rebuilding it, already thinking about what adjustments are possible, what the weather might do, how to communicate differently with the production team about the technical elements, how to make the staging deliver what he saw in his head the first time he imagined it. That is not speculation. That is the pattern. That is who he has always been. The trainee who stayed in the practice room hours after everyone else had gone home. The performer who would rewatch his own footage not to feel good about what went right, but to understand down to the smallest detail what could go further. The artist who, at every stage of a career that most people would consider to have already exceeded every possible benchmark, continues to reach for something higher. That drive is the reason the live stream happened the way it did. It's the reason his hands were shaking, and he went on camera anyway. It's the reason 70,000 people stood in the rain and felt like they were witnessing something true. Because they were. And they will again on the 11th, and again on the 12th, and then in every city on the list after that, across 30-plus regions, through the rest of 2026 and into 2027, in stadiums full of people who came because something about this music and this person got into them in a way they can't fully explain. The Arirang World Tour has begun. It started with rain and smoke that didn't clear and a live stream that broke a fandom's heart a little. And somehow that is the most fitting possible beginning. Because BTS has never been about perfect conditions. They have never been about everything going exactly the way it was planned. They have been, from the very beginning, about what happens when people who care impossibly much keep showing up anyway. Jimin showed up last night. In every sense of that phrase. On the stage in the rain, with a creative vision that the weather wouldn't let him fully execute. And then again, an hour later on his phone, with shaking hands, telling the truth about how the night felt. That's the whole story. That's all of it. And it's enough. It has always been enough. If you're going on the 11th or the 12th, you already know what you're walking into. You know he's going to come out there with everything he is plus everything he learned from last night. And if you're watching from home, if you're part of the army that was online last night watching that live and feeling everything, you're not alone. The whole fandom felt it, and the whole fandom will be watching on the 11th. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. We cover everything BTS, the concerts, the music, the moments that happen after the lights go down. Drop a comment and tell me what you thought about last night, what you thought about the live, and what you're expecting from night 2. I'll see you in the next one.